question was, should parents pay their kids through their business or use 529s or both?
If you had to pick one, I would say pay your kids. Well, possible exception to that. So there are different kinds of 529 plans. So there are prepaids and then there are savings or investment accounts. So like Florida has a prepaid plan where if you're a Florida resident and your kid's going to go to Florida schools, then you can prepay whatever their college tuition would be. And it's way cheaper if you start 15 years in advance. And there's different plans and everything. And different states have different rules as far as who can buy into it. Some states you can be out of state and still buy into their plan and get into their rules. So if you have a prepaid plan, that's probably going to be the most cost effective for college savings. And like Florida will pay another state an equivalent amount of what they would have paid to a Florida school. So there's things like that to navigate. If it's a 529 investment account where I'm just putting money in and it's investing tax free on as long as it's used for education purposes, then you're going to be better off typically paying the kid through your own company. Now, before people lose their minds, there's a couple caveats to go along with that. One is the kid has to do something, right? It's got to have a marketable skill that you would pay for. And that's going to depend on the capability of the child. Generally, it's between ages of 8 and 17. That's available. But if you set it up right, you can pay a child potentially as much as $22,000 a year, at least for this year. The number changes with standard deductions. To set it up right, you can pay them 22 grand. You can put 7 grand into a traditional IRA. Then that leaves them underneath the standard deduction, and so that will be totally tax free from federal income tax, free from Social Security tax, free from Medicare tax, free from federal unemployment. In most states, it'll also be free from state unemployment tax. And depending on the state, you might have a state income tax amount, or maybe not. It just depends on how that particular state operates. And so that's a possibility, but it has to be backed upable by what the kid's doing. When they're younger, typically we're talking more low-skilled kind of stuff. They're cleaning up the office, they're taking out the trash. I've got my 11-year-old. She does all my filing and opens my mail, scans it, puts it in the computer, and all that kind of stuff. And she does the shredding. And in your market, you have to figure out whatever that's worth. So, like in my market, it's actually a decently paid job to be an office admin like that. Now, she doesn't rack up a whole lot of hours. It's whatever she does, she gets a good rate for. As they get older and they become more capable, a lot of times I'll talk to parents and I'll say, what you should really be having them doing is your social media management. So 1, that's a real job. 2, it has real impact on your business. 3, they are better at it than you are. They're better at the Instagram. They're better at Facebook. Maybe not. Facebook's for old people, but they're better at all the social media stuff than we are, because it's one of those generational things. They could be doing research on your competitors. They could be planning out your posts. They could be responding to doing all the replies and DMs and whatever. That's solid work that they could be doing, and it's a highly paid skill, depending on where you are in the country. If you do that, now you have a tax-free way that's a deduction to your company, is tax-free to them, and is able to shift a good amount of that income over and creates that tax savings. And on top of that, the biggest pushback I get when I talk to people about putting their kids on payroll is like, I don't want to pay my kid 15 grand or 10 grand or whatever the number is. And my point is that you're doing it anyway. So there's no kid who is free. We're starting all of the summer classes right now, so I got to pay for this camp, pay for that camp. There's swim team, and then there's sleepaway camp, and whatever else. I don't know. My wife just says, "Oh, we're spending this much." I'm like, okay. So, they have a great time, so that's all good. It's expensive, right? So instead of the parent paying for it, the kid pays for their own stuff, and that's how you're able to get the tax deduction and make good use of that money rather than just handing your kid like $10,000 or whatever. Because you're still the parent, you're still in control of the funds. and then you get to have all the conversations about money with the child as they're growing up in a way that they can understand. It's like, okay, you want to go to sleepaway camp this year? That's $400 a night. It's like, okay, we can do that. Whatever other conditions you have as a parent are satisfied, and you can go. And the bank account balance is going to go from this down to this. Okay, and then they say, hey, do I really want to go? Because it's their money, right? It's got their name on the account. So then then they start making those hard choices. Do I really want to spend that money? What does it mean to budget? What does it mean to have one thing and not another? Opportunity cost and those kind of things. It's one of my favorite things just for the development of the kids' financial acumen. Even if there were no tax benefits, I'd still have my preference to do that. But there are tax benefits. So yeah, might as well use it. And because the amounts you could potentially shift over are larger than what you can do with a 529 plan, then it generally makes a lot more sense. So if you have 529 prepaids, that's a good deal. 529 investment accounts, less of a good deal. Kids on payroll, great deal. As long as the conditions are satisfied.
Understood. I'm just thinking that if a kid has to pay for the summer camp, that's less kids going. They're like, no, thank you. Not this summer.